Tonight, when the sun goes down, you're going to flip a switch. Light will flood the room, and you won't think twice about it. But for almost the entire history of your species, that switch didn't exist. When the sun set, the world simply went dark. And something in you still remembers what that meant. You might think you know what scared early humans at night. Predators. Maybe cold. Maybe the simple fact of not being able to see. But the real answer is far stranger. The thing your ancestors feared most after dark wasn't the dark itself. It was being alone in it. Think about the last time you walked into an unlit room. Your hand probably found the wall before you even decided to look for a switch. Your steps slowed. Your shoulders rose slightly. That is not a learned behavior. That is a script written into your body long before language existed, and it activates whether or not anything dangerous is actually there. For roughly 2 million years, hominins lived without reliable control over light. Fire changed that, but not completely, and not for everyone, and not every night. Even after fire, darkness still meant a narrowing of the senses. Vision, the dominant human sense, the one responsible for most of how you orient in space, simply switched off. What replaced it was something far older. Hearing, smell, a heightened, almost unbearable awareness of your own skin. Researchers who study the evolution of human fear, including psychologist David Rakison, have pointed out that certain fears appear in human infants with no prior exposure or learning required. Fear of large animals. Fear of unfamiliar faces. Fear of sudden loss of support. These are not taught, they are inherited, the residue of millions of years where guessing wrong meant dying. Darkness fits this pattern almost perfectly, but with a twist most people miss. Darkness on its own is not dangerous. A pitch-black cave with no predator inside is in itself harmless. So why does your body react to it as though something is there? The answer lies not in the dark, but in what darkness takes away from you. It removes your ability to predict, and prediction, more than light, more than warmth, more than food in the moment, is what kept your ancestors alive. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy has written extensively about the cooperative nature of early human survival, arguing that humans evolved not as solitary predators, but as a species uniquely dependent on group vigilance. One set of eyes sleeping, several more staying alert. Early human groups likely took turns watching through the night, a behavior echoed today in remaining hunter-gatherer societies studied by researchers in Tanzania and Namibia. The danger was rarely a single ancestor against a single predator. The danger was an ancestor alone, separated from the group, with no one watching their back. This is the detail almost every retelling of caveman fear gets wrong. It was not the dark that triggered the deepest alarm in the ancient brain. It was isolation within the dark, a human by the fire, surrounded by others, breathing slow. A human outside the fire's light, alone, breathing fast. Same darkness. Completely different threat level. Your body still makes this distinction today automatically, without asking your permission. Notice how a dark room feels different when someone else is in the house versus when you are completely alone. The light hasn't changed. The danger, if there is any at all, hasn't changed. But your nervous system responds as if it has. This connects to something deeper than fear of predators. It connects to a need so fundamental that its absence is measurably damaging. Social psychologist John Cacioppo spent decades studying loneliness, and his research found that perceived social isolation activates threat response regions of the brain in patterns strikingly similar to physical danger, not metaphorically similar, measurably similar. Being alone, to a brain shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of group survival, registers as a literal threat to life. Cacioppo's work went further than simply mapping brain activity. His studies tracked sleep quality, immune markers, and even cardiovascular stress in people who reported chronic loneliness, and the pattern held across all of it. Isolation didn't just feel bad, it produced biological signatures resembling ongoing physical threat, elevated stress hormones, disrupted sleep, a nervous system stuck in a low simmer of vigilance as if danger were always one room away. Now place that same body in an actual unlit room, alone, and the simmer becomes a full alarm. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it reframes a feeling almost everyone has dismissed as silly at some point in their life. The discomfort of an empty house at night, the specific kind of quiet that feels heavier when no one else is breathing nearby. You were likely told at some point that this fear was childish, something to be outgrown. But the biology doesn't outgrow it, it only gets better hidden, masked by adult composure, while still firing in the background exactly as it did when you were small. So when you feel a flicker of unease alone in the dark, you are not irrational. You are running code optimized for a world where alone and dark combined meant something had likely gone wrong. Maybe you wandered from camp. Maybe the group moved without you noticing. Maybe you were the only one not warned. Here's where the story gets stranger. Darkness didn't just threaten the body. It threatened the sense's ability to confirm safety at all. Vision, again, is dominant in humans, responsible for an outsized share of how the brain models the surrounding world. Remove it and the brain doesn't go quiet. It compensates by amplifying everything else. And it does this faster than conscious thought. A snapped twig, the smallest shift in air, a sound that might be wind or might be breathing. In daylight, your eyes would resolve the question instantly. In darkness, the question stays open. And an open question, with potential life or death stakes, is exactly the kind of input that triggers a stress response, not because the sound was dangerous, because it was unresolved. This is why darkness still feels different even in a perfectly safe modern bedroom, doors locked, alarm set. The ancient threat detection system doesn't check your locks. It checks two variables only. Can I see? Am I alone? When both answers point the wrong way, the alarm fires, regardless of century, regardless of evidence. There's a reason fire holds such a central place in nearly every human culture's earliest myths and rituals. It wasn't only warmth, it wasn't only cooking. Fire restored vision. And just as importantly, fire created a visible boundary of safety that everyone in the group could see and gather around. Sit close to the fire and you confirm two things simultaneously. I can see, and I am not alone. Step outside that ring of light, and both protections vanish at once. Modern humans recreate this instinct constantly without realizing it. Notice how cities feel different after dark, depending on whether the streets are lit and populated or dark and empty. Same physical danger level on paper, wildly different feeling in your chest. You are not responding to actual crime statistics in that moment. You are responding to an ancient equation. Light plus people equals safety. Dark plus alone equals alarm. There's a twist here that flips the common assumption. Most people assume fear of the dark is primarily about predators, about teeth and claws hidden in shadow. But cross-cultural anthropological work, including comparative studies of hunter-gatherer night behavior, suggests the social variable mattered just as much, often more. A predator could be fought, fled from, or warned about, as long as you weren't facing it alone. The truly catastrophic scenario was not a wolf in the dark, it was a human, separated, undetected, unrescued. This reframes something you've probably felt without naming it. The mild dread of being the last one to leave a building at night? The relief of hearing a roommate's footsteps when you thought you were home alone? The specific, nameless discomfort of an unlit hallway in an otherwise empty house, even when you know logically that nothing is wrong. None of this is really about the dark. It's about what darkness historically signaled regarding your distance from the group. You can test this in your own memory. Picture the last time darkness genuinely unsettled you. Now ask whether you were alone in that moment or with someone else. For most people, the answer maps almost perfectly onto the intensity of the fear. Darkness with company rarely frightens anyone. Darkness in isolation almost always does, at least a little. This also explains a pattern many people notice but rarely question. Children often beg for a parent to stay in the room until they fall asleep, not because the room is more dangerous with the lights off, but because a sleeping child is, in evolutionary terms, the most vulnerable possible state. No vigilance, no ability to flee. The only thing standing between that vulnerability and disaster for nearly all of human history was another set of eyes nearby. A parent's presence wasn't comfort in the abstract. It was quite literally the watch shift that kept a defenseless body alive until morning. Adults outgrow the request, but rarely the underlying calculation. You may not ask someone to sit with you anymore, but notice how much easier sleep comes when you know someone else is simply in the house. There's also a reason this fear resists logic so completely. You can recite every safety statistic about your neighborhood, check every lock twice, and still feel your pulse rise slightly, walking down a dark hallway alone. That gap between what you know and what you feel is not a flaw in your reasoning. It's evidence that this system evolved long before reasoning did, and it doesn't update based on argument. It updates slowly, based on repeated safe experience, which is exactly why familiar dark spaces eventually stop triggering the same response while unfamiliar ones still do. So the next time the lights go out, and your stomach tightens slightly before your conscious mind even catches up, you're not malfunctioning. You're not being irrational or childish or overly anxious. You are hearing a message sent from an ancestor who survived specifically because they took that feeling seriously. A message that says, more than anything else, find the others. Tonight, when you flip that switch and the room floods with light, notice what actually happens in your body. Notice the small release in your shoulders, the way your breathing evens out, the way the room suddenly feels like yours again. That relief isn't really about visibility. It's about confirmation that you're not facing the world alone. The dark never needed monsters to feel dangerous. It only ever needed distance from everyone who would have come looking for you.